Well, hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Speedway Soccer. It's been a minute since we've done one of these, but we're back in the swing of things. We have a good crew here tonight, and we're going to talk the latest Nashville SC news. I'm joined tonight by Jonathan Slape and Chris Ivey, both of Broadway Sports Media. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. It's good to be back in the swing of things. I know the last time we said this, we were back in the swing of things, but hopefully, it finally sticks. But yeah, no, good to get back at it.
Yeah, guys, I'm doing great. Manchester United gave up 4 goals to Brentford. Nashville lost at home again. Coventry, who I follow, has canceled yet another home game because our pitch is a disaster. So yeah, it's a great week for me.
Yeah, Chris, I got my Glazers out scarf back here. No, yeah, I'm with you on the Manchester United front. Slape would normally be laughing at us, but it's not much better for Liverpool. United's a bottom table
Yeah,
side,
but
and
at
Liverpool's a
least
mid-table side. So at least for 2
oh,
weeks.
come on. And we'll talk about this when we get into the Premier League our Premier League discussion at the end. But while it has not gone how we wanted it, how I would like the start of the season, there's at least there's a few things to hang our hat on. But before we talk about the depressing start to the Premier League season, we can talk about the depressing run of form for Nashville
Well,
SC.
before we do that, let's talk about something a little bit more fun. Let's talk about the All-Star Game and the Skills Challenge. Hani Mukhtar continues to dominate and kind of single-handedly helped MLS win the Skills Challenge. What did you guys make of that? Let's start with the Skills Challenge. Just kind of, I know it's still relatively new, having been brought back. What do you guys make of that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I love the skill challenge. I'd be quite okay even if they dropped the All-Star game and just kept the skills challenge. I think it's a lot of fun. It's entertaining. It's something you don't see really anywhere else in soccer. And obviously for Hani Mukhtar, he showed out, and it was kind of a coming of age party on a national stage for him, where not everyone gets to see necessarily his exploits week in and week out, but winning it on the crossbar challenge, doing it well on that passing volley in the bucket, ski ball, whatever you want to call it, challenge. I thought he showed himself well and kind of made a name for himself for a national audience.
I do want to, so on Skills Challenge, call out MLS for being the cowards that they are, and tease us with goalie wars, and then not even put it on TV. Shout out to the heroes out there that were posting the videos and giving us the taste of goalie wars. But I mean, it was like MLS Next Kids, which is just not the same level of competition. But yeah, I mean, I love the Skills Challenge. I love the things in this league that make it uniquely American and set us apart from the rest of the global soccer landscape. And it's just a fun event, and they do a really good job. And I feel like even like the teams, whether it be the MLS All-Star or the Liga MX All-Stars or the various club teams that participate, they all like the opposing teams always seem to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what you guys said. It was just fun. It's one of my favorite events that MLS does. It's the kind of games that we would all kind of stick around after practice when we were in high school and try it. We would all play crossbar challenge and everything, and it's just fun seeing like pros do that same thing at just a much higher level. And I mean, it's also just a different look at how ridiculously talented these guys are. I know we watch games multiple times a week, but this is just a kind of a different look at it. And like you said, Slape, it's something that makes MLS unique. I mean, I think it would be fun to see. I know it's been more of a MLS versus Liga MX, but kind of pivoting towards the future of the All-Star game, it would be fun to see kind of a skills challenge type thing with more top players from around the world, whether that's in MLS or in some other format. But kind of along those lines, with a Leagues Cup coming next year, and really taking off an entire month for Liga MX versus MLS competition, what do you guys think should be the future of the All-Star game? Do you think they should stick with this Liga MX versus MLS format, or do you think they should go back to the old European team coming here, or should they go back to East versus West, or any other ideas out there?
Well, they've never done East versus West, except I feel like maybe the first year, the first 1 or 2 years.
I think it was if they did, it was very, very early on.
I mean, I think at this point, the standard of the league is of the fact that, like, I think an East versus West is a lot of fun. There's a lot of really good players in this league that miss out on the All-Star game when you're only talking about 20 guys at most, and I think it just would be a lot of fun to have against each other. I mean, as of right now, we know Liga MX says that is no longer happening because that contract ended for that to continue ended after this year. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see an East versus West situation.
Yeah, I think an East-West All-Star game would be a good spot for it to go. And there's just so much talent in this league now that it's, as Slape said, that there's plenty of deserving guys who should be highlighted in that. That being said, though, I would like to see, as fun as the Steals Challenge is, maybe that's the point where you bring in some stars from elsewhere, even if they're not playing in the game, or maybe even some like recently retired stars, because it doesn't take that much physical. You don't have to be in shape to do the Skills Challenge, but it would be a good chance to, throw a Rooney out there, or a Ronaldinho, or somebody who would have a lot of
Nick Romano for goalie wars.
For goalie wars, yeah. I mean, I think you can get creative there where you don't necessarily, have both be the same competition.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happens next, I mean, I think it's a uniquely MLS thing. Uniquely American sports, but it is kind of a fun concept that you don't get to see around the rest of the world. And I'm interested to see what happens with it next year. Kind of pivoting into some less positive news. Nashville have not been good recently. Since the June international break, they've taken 11 points from 12 games. They've scored 16 goals. 8 of those have been Hani Mukhtar. CJ Sapong hasn't scored. Alex Muil hasn't scored. Randall Leal hasn't scored. Teal Bunbury has scored half of the goals scored by the rest of the team. And then they lost again at home, dropping points in what was a 6-pointer against Minnesota United. I'll toss it to you, Chris. Just initial reactions to the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because there were stretches there where it certainly felt like Nashville was playing better. I think we all thought standing in that stadium that after the first goal, after Hani's goal, that the momentum was there and that Nashville was going to get a second before Minnesota did. But I mean, what seems like once again, just kind of a little loose moment in the back, and there goes a 2-1 lead for Minnesota. And you highlighted it with, who hasn't scored for Nashville, because that's really the story here is that until CJ Sapong, until Randall Leal, even Alex Muil or whomever start scoring goals for Nashville, they're going to keep dropping points. I mean, it can't just be Hani and, the one little hot streak of Teal Bunbury. It's got to be a team effort. And when your starting striker hasn't scored since May, it creates a lot of issues.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to remain not as negative as maybe I would like to be. It's just frustrating watching these games. And like you said, Chris, like there was stretches of the game last week that, Nashville looked pretty good. I thought there was several instances where they played really, really well, but it was down to, Minnesota scored off of 2 individual mistakes. Walker Zimmerman played a really terrible ball to out of the back that just fell to the Minnesota player. And then again, Shackmore overcommits. There's still 2 more passes after that, but the more overcommit there really allowed Reynoso to play that ball over, and they scored again from that. And it feels like it's consistently being there are individual mistakes that are letting this team down over and over.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what makes it frustrating is there have been a couple games where you can say, okay, Nashville was clearly outplayed and clearly deserved to lose. But overall, on the course of the season, I think by and large they've played pretty well. at least in significant stretches, and they have not come away with points. That was an issue last year, and I think it was kind of papered over a little bit because they didn't lose at home. But I mean, we saw it at home where they played well and had chances to go ahead, chances to extend their lead. It didn't capitalize and then let teams back into the game. And I think we're seeing similar problems this year, except they're not getting draws like they used to.
I think
they'll dominate for stretches and then either let teams back in or they'll not capitalize and not. I mean, we saw it against Minnesota. They got the equalizer, and then they had plenty of chances to go ahead, didn't finish any of those, and let Minnesota back in and take 3 points. Sorry, Slape, go ahead.
No, see, I think there's a few. I've been trying to think back of what are the differences between this year and last year with why we have seen this regression of this team. And I think there's a few different spots. And that is one of them is like last season we talked about not enough secondary scoring, but it's become even more one-sided at this point. Like, last year we had CJ Sapong go on a tear. At one point it was a very long streak. Randall Leal was scoring more goals. And then you even had guys like Daniel Rios or Johnny Cadiz that could come off the bench and contribute and, either help Nashville rescue a point or, help hold on to hold on to the result. And we haven't had a single late winner this year. Like there are no signature, wins or comebacks or even draws that this team can hang its hat on. And I think the other thing is, we did see these individual mistakes last year. But I think Joe Willis was playing at such a higher level last year where a lot of those mistakes got papered over by some of the saves he was making. And that's just not happening this year.
Yeah, on the MLS Power Ranking show, I mentioned that it felt like a lot of individual mistakes. And Matt Doyle pushed back and said that he thought one of the biggest issues was just not getting pressure to the ball around the box. And that according to the advanced numbers, Nashville is one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, I think you can make an argument that not pressuring the ball outside the box is an individual mistake, especially because it's been the same players consistently over and over again. Chris, do you have any idea, in your opinion, what is kind of the root cause of that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think, to me, at least the eye test, I think Dax has lost a step. And I think you can kind of tell in the way he plays and that he lags off a little bit. He's a little less aggressive. One of the things that you see is it just feels like, I mean, maybe I'd have to go back and try to find some numbers on this, but it feels like there's a lot more touches right at the top of the box this year than we've ever seen in the first 2 years of Nashville, because they would do a great job of pushing the ball wide or forcing teams to play back and just grind it to a halt and make things really slow. And just prevent those ball entries into dangerous areas. And you're seeing that more and more this year. I mean, maybe part of that also is, if Nashville isn't scoring earlier in the match and they're pressing to get that goal, that leaves a little bit more of that space. I mean, I feel like in this entire run of home matches with dropped points, we keep talking about the first half. It looks, first 30 minutes look great for Nashville. They're on the front foot. They're putting in chance after chance after chance. You score one of those goals and maybe, the defense can sit back a little bit more and be more cohesive in that instead of pushing forward. I mean, I feel like it's just a lot of little things all adding up together that's kind of making this a leakier defense than what we've seen.
Yeah, and I would you're talking about lack of pressures. Like Nashville has really conceded zone 14. And for those that don't know, it's if you break the field down into 18 equal portions, zone 14 is that space that's top of the box, toward kind of the middle of the circle and kind of in between the 18-yard box. And Nashville's not getting the pressures there. And I think that has a lot to do with what this team is struggling at. And around the goal scoring side is I feel like knowing how Nashville has struggled as of late to maintain leads. I wish we saw a little bit more of once you have the like, especially in the times where Nashville is scoring the first goal and then it's turning into a draw, is like, grabbing it a little bit more, like, putting your foot down and trying to get either that second goal or maybe even that third goal, and not having to rely on, oh, we've got a 1-0 win and we're or 1-0 lead and we just have to hold on hold on, grit our teeth through the last 30 minutes of a game.
Well, and the thing with secondary scoring too is, I mean, just from looking at the transfers, Nashville have known this is an issue for a while. I mean, they spent DP money on Jandre Cadiz. They went out and got Ake Loba. They brought in Rodrigo Pinheiro, who wasn't cheap. And I mean, all three of those guys were good players before they got to Nashville. Especially Pinheiro's case, he's been a good player since he left Nashville. And so it seems like there's for whatever reason, when these attacking players come to Nashville, they've just stagnated. And it's three pretty big misses in three players that Nashville really needed to hit. And I think everybody knows about CJ Sapong not scoring double-digit goals in consecutive seasons. And I think everybody kind of saw his performance last year and just assumed we'd get the same from him. But just based on whatever 13 years of a sample size, that's not been the case. So it's just a little bit strange how Nashville approached the forward position this season. I mean, to their credit, Teal Bunbury has been good when he's been on the field. He's just hardly been on the field. And at some point, you can't count on MLS veterans on the wrong side of 30 to produce when around the league. That's not really the case.
Especially when at first you try to use them out of position. Teal Bunbury is not a target striker just because he's 6'2". He's never been that in his career, and in his 30s is not going to become one. So I mean, I think he's brought some scoring in, and I've not been his biggest fan, but I mean, I think he's come in and done really well for the past few weeks. But looking back at last season, right now, if Teal isn't on the bench, he's really the only option to come in and create a goal. Last year, you had at least, Cadiz, Rios. Toward the end of the season, you had Ake Loba. Right now, it's Luke Hawkinson and Teal Bunbury if he's off the bench, or if he's on the bench, or Ethan Zubak, and that is for a team that says it has high expectations. That's just not good enough, and they have to figure out a way to fix this. It's not going to get fixed this year, of course, but I think as we kind of talk, toward the end of the season, I think the upcoming offseason for this NSC team may be the most important in club history thus far.
I think it'll definitely be the most interesting because I think they're going to have to be more active than they have really at any point, except for building the initial roster in their expansion year. And kind of going back to just attackers underwhelming. I mean, I think the most damning piece of evidence is that Ake Loba has been injured the past 2 weeks, and you would hardly notice. Because his impact on the field has been about the same. And that's we talked all year about how, okay, well, maybe last year he developed a bit slower than we'd like, but sure, MLS is weird, hard to adapt to, whatever. Give him 6 months. After a full preseason, he'll fit in, and he's made less impact than he did last year. At some point, regardless of if he's a good player or not, you just got to cut him loose and free up a DP spot and get someone who will produce. So I think that position is going to be huge this winter.
Yeah, my thing though is he's also gotten, I feel, less chances this year than he did last year. He has not started a league game this year, and right. I'm fine. I'm very much in the mind of, I know we've done the Ake Loba thing to death, but I'm very much in the mind of I'm fine if they need to cut bait. I just feel like you have 10 games left, and you aren't getting scoring from CJ Sapong. You got to try something. They say the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over. But I mean, at this point, you're outside of the playoffs. Try something.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I mean,
I
he's not
agree.
he's not even available right now. So even if they wanted to
Yeah.
try something, I mean, that creates, a wrench in that as well. I mean, he's become so irrelevant now that it took us 20 minutes into this podcast to talk Ake Loba, and I feel like that's a record for us in the last year. I mean, that's kind of how irrelevant it feels. Like every other episode for months has been quickly Ake Loba, Ake Loba, Ake Loba. And you just get that vibe of, and it's not just us, but like just the Twitter conversation, the conversation around the stadium, you just don't even hear his name brought up anymore. And I think that's kind of how little that fans and supporters expect anymore. I think everyone's kind of mentally cut bait already. It's just really the question, does John Ingram cut bait now too?
Yeah, and
I think my other thing with it,
it's a weird situation. I mean, because like I watched him for 2 years before Nashville signed him. I mean, they've been after him for a long time, and it was kind of public knowledge that they were interested. He didn't become a bad player overnight. I don't think he's been given a fair chance. I think Slape, you kind of alluded to that earlier. I don't think he's been given enough minutes to really prove himself. But at this point, I'm not sure he's ever going to be. And if he's not going to, if he's a good player but he's not going to be used, then at some point, just you got to cut bait and find a DP who is going to be used, regardless if maybe he's a worse player, but you got to get some kind of performance and value out of that DP spot.
Yeah, and I think my last thing is why you don't even hear people talk about it, is like, because frankly we're just fed the same like coach speak every time Ake Loba gets brought up, and it's just like, I'm not expecting the either the front office or the coach to really throw a player on the bus, or part of this is like, Ben said, it is very public knowledge that they were after Ake Loba for 2 years. So what changed in him as a player, or did you just not understand how to use him? Like, somebody is to blame here, and I tend to think it's maybe on it's somewhere in the front. It's not just him. It's not just an Ake Loba thing. What did you not see, or how have you not adapted to the system? And I think people are just tired of hearing the same, oh, I think he'll come good, or he'll get his opportunity. It's just the same, coach speak that tells us absolutely nothing.
All right. As much as we want to keep going on this, we probably got to move on. Anibal Godoy came back, which is one of the few positives that Nashville has had recently. We really quickly here, how much of an impact do you think that's going to have on the midfield? Kind of some of the issues that we were talking about earlier.
I think it's huge. I mean, go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, I think quite a bit. I just think he pairs well with the other three midfielders. He offers a little bit more in progressive passing and ball movement up the field. I've never been, while I like both individually, I'm not a huge fan of an Anunga Davis pairing for that reason. And then even Dax, if Dax has time to pick out passes from deep, then yeah, that's great. But it's not like you're ever going to see him progress the ball that much forward. And so I think that will help with Godoy out there. Do I think it's going to drastically change things? No. I think you still have the same secondary scoring issues that have to be resolved and the defensive lapses that have to be resolved. But it's certainly not going to hurt either.
Yeah, I'm a big Anibal Godoy fan. I like a lot of what he brings to the game. Like you said, ball progression, ball movement, the ability to carry the ball upfield through midfield. Outside of Randall Ayal and Hani Mukhtar, he's probably the best in the team at that. And then his ability to ride challenges and create contact. No one knows how to create contact and draw fouls in this team more than Anibal Godoy. And when you have Hani Mukhtar and Godoy's winning those free kicks in dangerous positions, I mean, I think it's not going to be a huge drastic change. But I do think it is going to be a much needed boost for this team that has felt. Well, Godoy is very, has some similarities to McCarty and to Davis. I just think he adds a little bit of an added dimension and just freshens up what has become a very stale position for Nashville.
One more thing, and I thought you were going to touch on it there for a second. I would say he adds an edge. I don't know that there's another player in Nashville's lineup other than maybe Leal who plays with as much of an edge and kind of fiery passion that Godoy does. And maybe that's the kick in the butt this team needs right now. So, maybe not from he'll help on the tactical side, he'll help on the ball progression, but maybe it's just that little bit of extra oomph is really what Nashville needs right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
So a huge match for Nashville coming up on Sunday against FC Dallas. It's not necessarily a six-pointer because Dallas are at this point pretty far ahead. But Nashville cannot afford to drop points again. Just looking at the table, they're tied on points with LA Galaxy and Vancouver. They're behind both on wins, which is the first tiebreaker. Then they have Colorado Rapids, who are 2 points behind them. All three of those teams that they'll play with in the next couple weeks. Then they have
Galaxy's also played two less. Galaxy have also played two less games too.
Colorado's played one less, and then you have Seattle Sounders, who Nashville don't play them again, but they're a point behind Nashville with a game in hand. So essentially, they have to take points and get help from other teams to make the playoffs. This game against Dallas is a huge one. Obviously, I mean, Dallas has kind of turned into USMNT light just with all the national team players they have. Sebastian Lletget recently traded from New England Revolution. Paul Arriola came over at the start of the year. And then Jesus Ferreira, who's probably going to be I think has the best shot at this point to be the starting number 9 for the U.S. at the World Cup. But he's suspended due to yellow card accumulation for this match in Nashville. Chris, just looking at these two teams, how do you think Nashville matches up with Dallas? And do you think this is a match where Nashville can kind of get an elusive 3 points at home, which would just be, by the way, the 4th time that they have done that?
I mean, it helps that Ferreira's out on yellow card accumulation, so you don't have that threat up top, so you feel a little bit better about it. But there's still good, talented players there. I mean, we saw what Velasco did to us, carving through the defense for that second goal in the game earlier in the season down in Frisco. And then Ariola's, a good player in this league as well. Lletget's, as he gets more integrated into that team, I think he's going to add a good dimension to them as well. So they're certainly a threat. Can Nashville take advantage? I'd like to think so, but nothing over the last few weeks has given me, a great amount of comfort that they actually will take advantage of it. But it's starting to become do or die time that if they don't start picking up wins at home, there isn't going to be playoffs in Nashville this year.
Yeah, I think the only thing that gives me any kind of hope for this game outside of Ferreira being suspended is the fact that Dallas just played last night. So while Nashville has a full week of rest, FC Dallas went to Philadelphia last night, got a late winner.
They were at home.
They were at home. So for some reason, I thought they were away. But win against Philly last night. And so, they're going to be coming off short rest. I'm legit a little bit terrified of, what Paul Arriola could do running at this mistake-prone back line right now. I think that, his industry and the ability to press and win the ball back. And if Nashville is not pressuring, in those, that zone 14, Arriola could get inside and get on the end of something, create something. So, I'm, very concerned about this team. We saw what happened last time, 0-0 going into the end. And then, 2 individual mistakes. There was also the game that Gary Smith blamed Ake Loba for the goal for the second one because he said he didn't try to win the ball back 80 yards from goal. Not sure how that he's the lone one that was responsible for that. But no, FC Dallas has a lot of weapons, and it is going to be a very tough game, especially in the midfield where I really feel like Dallas has some guys that are going to be able to kind of run around Nashville's midfield.
Do you guys think, I think Davey tossed this out on the Nashville Soccer Show. Do you guys think at any point this season Nashville should revert to a back 3? I think some of the issues we've seen in midfield have maybe led people to ask if getting 3 defenders would give them a little bit more cover. Where do you guys land on that?
I mean, I think on my side is I know Davey talked about it on the National Soccer Show this week, and I tend to agree that at the very least Nashville wasn't scoring a lot, and they were maybe they were not winning games as much, but they were also, if they were winning games, they were ugly, but like they were getting results, which is something that Nashville's even struggled to do that at home. And I think that you have Jack Mayer there, you have Dave Romney, Walker Zimmerman. I would like to see Shaq Moore a little bit in the back three. I know he's probably more traditionally a right back, but I think his ability to get forward would create and cause some mismatches. And so, yeah, I mean, at this point, like, I'm tired. Like, I thought we would see the end of the back three, but based on results, like it's worth going back and giving it another shot.
Yeah, and I mean, the first thought I have is we're already having enough scoring problems. Why take an attacker off the field? But if you're already having scoring problems and that extra attacker is not doing it, then you need to maybe go back to what worked in the past 2 years of just winning and grinding out 1-0 type of games. So if that's the case, then if you add Jack Mayer back into a back three, then it kind of gives Romney, Mayer, Zimmerman more license to kind of press forward into those kind of like what we've been talking about, those zone 14 touches that you, just because one center back moves up and tries to help close down, that you're not left exposed behind that. So maybe that helps. And maybe that kind of stops some of these goals that we're seeing Nashville concede from those areas. But honestly, I think whether it's the back three or a back four, none of the issues are really going to be solved until somebody else puts the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah. I would like to see, especially like back to the Shaq Moore piece, like he has put so many good balls into great positions. Like I said on, when Nashville is attacking the end opposite of the supporter section, I mean that's the side of the field on. So like I'm watching Shaq Moore in person and like seeing some of the positions he gets himself in, and then some of the balls he's played in. That there's been no one there. I like the idea of like if you play with a 3-5-2, you're getting Hani a little more centrally, where he will drift out wide at times. And like at the very least, like I mean, if he's just going to keep scoring, like I'd like to see Shaq Moore and they're feeding him the ball. And then if not, you have a guy like maybe you can get Sapong off the mark, and if CJ gets one, it's probably going to quickly become 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they've been like we talked about this earlier, but they've been creating chances and just haven't been finishing them. I know that doesn't do any good in the points, and at this point, it might not even be predictive. But I mean, CJ Sapong has had chances to get more than one goal since May, and he's going to get more chances this season. And at some point, I mean, Dax McCarty said it. At some point, you just have to put one in and hope that leads to a domino effect. Kind of wrapping up the Dallas preview. I'll toss it to you first here, Chris. Just predictions for the game.
In my gut, I feel like a win is coming for the reasons we talked about of missing Ferreira. As Slape said, they're coming off a midweek game, but I'm also, on the other hand, I'm gonna believe it till I see it type of guy. So until then, I mean, I've got to say like a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I was gonna say a 1-1 draw. Like there's nothing out there. Like I don't have I probably have the least confidence out of the three of us. And I mean, I think a 1-1 draw is probably, would be a positive. While it wouldn't be seen as a positive result based on how this team has performed over the past few weeks, I would take it as a positive result. It's not what they need, but you got to win games. You got to at least quit losing at home.
I mean, you've got to quit losing, but I mean, I think it's a disaster at this point. I mean, you've got to, if there's any chance of making the playoffs, and I don't know if you guys think we will or won't. Maximo here in the chat obviously doesn't think we're going to make the playoffs, and I understand that position, and I kind of agree right now. But draws aren't going to cut it this late in the year. They've got the home games remaining. They've got a couple of really difficult road games. Nashville still has to go to Austin and to LAFC to close out the season. If you're not picking up wins at home, you're going to fall quickly down the table. And they've gotten really lucky these last few weeks that Seattle has been dropping points that, LA and others around them have, but it takes one day like what it was last night, and they already find themselves below the playoff line.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't really think we can add anything else there. Yeah, let's go to an even more depressing topic: the USMNT World Cup jerseys. You guys, what do you think of these?
Hot garbage. Especially the tie-dye one. We've even seen a few more pictures that have come out. There was a Dick's Sporting Goods put all the jerseys and everything out too early. So there was a video floating around of some of this. And while I was excited, I knew coming into this that we were going to finally get long sleeve jerseys for fans. They, of course, had to do that when they were so boring. So who saw the light in the long sleeve? It's just not even the players are like them. Like Weston McKennie on the leak on Instagram was like, we told them this wasn't it. And it's just for a team and group of players that has so much personality and so much diversity, to put these things forward as our options and as the finished product is just poor. And the other thing too is there's been a few things that have come out from designers within Nike that it doesn't necessarily, it's hard to believe, first of all, that this is the same company that has put out the Nigeria jerseys over the past few years, that have just been phenomenal, really captured the culture and the essence of their national team. But a lot of it is what people, that designers and stuff at Nike are saying, it also means that U.S. soccer, they're not given any creative direction, and it doesn't seem that U.S. soccer gives a shit, which is par for the course with this federation. But it's just a piss poor showing.
I think we're both kind of stunned. That was a solid rant. They're bad. I'm really disappointed, and I don't know why I'm disappointed, because at this point, expectations should be low based on the by and large the everything that they've given, except for there have been a handful of jerseys mixed in with the garbage, but I think overall it's just been
even what they wore in qualifying were great. I like the identity of a home jersey that is white with navy shorts. I love the retro Nike logo with the check and the word mark on that. And then I don't even know what to call what the away jersey was. But the shadow camo type, naval camo stuff. That jersey looks awesome. It looks uniquely American. I have the jacket. Yeah. I'm excited to rock that jacket throughout the World Cup. And they've put out there's been some instances, and I think it goes back to there's been no consistent identity with this team. Right. We saw in the 2010 World Cup, we saw them use the sash. They continued that through the next three jerseys after that, with the red one, the blue one with the white sleeves, and the Waldo. And there's just no consistent identity. And I think that in and of itself is what people make people the most frustrated, is it's always something different.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they need to have a consistent home identity, like you said. I think one of the issues, the biggest issue I have, is that if you're not going to take risks and actually try something interesting, then it at least has to be just solid and boring and good. And they've just been boring. Too often. This cycle was great. There have been, the Waldo is my favorite all time. We've had the Gold Cup, the striped Gold Cup special edition one recently.
The Bizarro Waldo.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there have been a handful of good ones in there, but it's just so inconsistent, and it feels like they'll finally hit on a design that everybody likes, and then pivot 180 degrees away from it with the next release, and it doesn't seem like Nike has any idea what people actually want.
Yeah, and like Sam from Yank Report was talking on Best Soccer.
By the
Show
way,
this week.
sponsor
He's
me,
like,
Nike, please.
Sam from Yank Report was talking on Best Soccer Show with Jason Davis that one of the things he's like, if Nike just kind of embrace like the overtly patriotic, like they'd probably like also sell stuff to like people who aren't soccer fans. Like nothing about the Nike crest says soccer about it. Like you could probably we've all probably seen that like patriotic Under Armour stuff that like people buy in droves, and I think that if you even embrace a more like overtly patriotic kind of jersey design, probably sell a lot of stuff just from like the random people that just pick it off the rack in a Nike store.
I have a new idea, guys. Let's take the jerseys away from Nike and give it to Old Navy.
They have the contract till 2033.
Oh, well, at that point we can. Everyone knows of the Old Navy July 4th clothing line. They'll make it super patriotic. They'll go for it. Honestly, I mean the jerseys. It's like what you guys said. I mean they're boring. They're awful. I think if they slapped a number on the front, it may salvage it just barely and slightly.
If they slapped a number on the front, it would look like a hockey sweater.
And that would be okay. It'd be something different. And it'd be a little bit more American of, it looks like a football jersey or a hockey sweater or something. Like that would be better than this, like, really even boring for a training kit style jersey.
Yeah, agreed. I have a lot of feelings.
So do any of us like that?
I'll if you want to talk jerseys, come find me on Twitter.
All right. Let's move on to something that's just about as depressing. This whole show has been depressing. The Premier League. Chris and I, we might as well just crawl under a rock and stay there for the next several years because the past 10 years have been misery. Slape, how's it going for you up there in 14th place? Way up in the top of the table?
Yeah, I mean, the game against Fulham was just like that was one of the most frustrating games. Watching the midfield was just absolutely terrible. Coming into the game against Crystal Palace, dealing with way too many injuries to start the season. I mean, Liverpool's kind of going through a bit of a change. The loss of Sadio Mane is a huge hole to fill. Darwin Nunez is who I'm a huge fan of. Just plays different. He plays more as a typical striker, and I think Liverpool is trying to still working through a few things and how he fits in there. He of course made a stupid decision, and while I don't think it was a red card, because we saw in the Tottenham Chelsea game you can pull someone down by their hair and not get a red card, he still put himself in the situation to get sent off. And so I think with a little bit more of a more traditional, or more Liverpool of years past coming into the United game. But other than that, I mean, it's been not the start that I thought we would have. But luckily, we get to remedy that by playing Manchester United on Monday.
Yeah, I don't think either Chris or I are excited about that.
No, it's going to be at 8. If it's anything less than 8 goals, Liverpool should also be relegated along with us.
Yeah,
I think the only fair thing to do would be to give United a 3-0 win, a 3-0 lead to start the game, and see how long that lasts. I would put it at 20 minutes before it's level.
Yeah. Well, if it was at Brentford, it would not take long. We've already figured that one out.
It's just been so bad, and I think Ten Hag is a fine coach, but this is such a massive project, and there's no structure ahead of him, and the Glazers are awful, and life sucks.
Yeah, I think I know there's been some comparisons that have been trying to been drawn of when Jurgen Klopp came into Liverpool, and that was not an overnight change. It took years. to get to the Liverpool that we've seen really from 18-19 on. And so, but I think the biggest difference between the situations that Ten Hag and Klopp found themselves in was that there was a foundation that had already been built at Liverpool. As far as with the transfer committee, some of the analytics work that they were doing, they were already in the process of wanting to expand the main stand, things around the training ground, and there's just none of that there. I mean, from everything that I've heard, is both the training ground and Old Trafford are in massive disrepair. There is no front office technical directive, in place, and it's just there's not that backbone there for United and for Ten Hag that there was. And Maximo in here, Mo getting giddy like it's Christmas, searching the record books to see which one he can break.
Just one? It will probably be several.
It should be multiple.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's just, it's. I think Ten Hag is a good coach. I think he has a philosophy. I just don't, and this is from an outsider, and you guys can tell me the more feel of the people on the ground, but like, I feel that he is not going to get the time that he needs to create to create the foundations that is going to get and if at this point too, if it doesn't work with Ten Hag, like, I mean, what's the option? Like, there is this is kind of like, you feel like you have to give him time because it almost feels kind of like last chance saloon.
I mean, on paper, I would argue he's probably the best manager they've had since. I mean, maybe since Ferguson left. I think Van Gaal had the resume. I don't think he was at the same stage in his career, and I think Jose Mourinho had proven that he wasn't really at that level.
I'd put back on Van Gaal a little bit because I feel like he at least improved players. Like, after Van Gaal,
a small group of specific players.
Yeah, a small group of specific players, but like since then, like, who is a United player that has come in and gotten better? Like, Marcus Rashford has regressed. Jadon Sancho, who was severely hampered by the decision to bring in Cristiano Ronaldo. Fred wasn't a terrible player.
I think Fred made pretty big steps last year, and I think he's probably the only one that I can think of off the top of my head.
But there's no one else that has like improved as a player when they got to United, and I just don't think there's been any training with that team since Van Gaal.
No, and you're right. It's a rudderless ship, and I don't even know if giving Ten Hag time is necessarily going to even be the answer. I mean, the answer really is new ownership. Until that happens, nothing's going to change. The Glazers have shown over the course of their tenure that they're not really all that interested in fixing the footballing side of things or even fixing the infrastructure of things at United. So until that happens, and to me, I mean, I measure it each year now that every transfer window that goes on and they still don't purchase a out-and-out defensive midfielder tells me all I need to know, that they aren't serious about fixing. Baby. Yeah, well, even Casemiro, like, I mean, it's a 30-year-old stopgap that, like, what the rumors are, 50 million for him. I mean, take that.
I think the latest I saw was 65 on 20 million a year
for a 30.
I saw 60 million euro. So the other thing with Casemiro, I think Casemiro could be a great player if you had like a young midfielder or two that you wanted Casemiro to come in. You signed to a 4-year contract. The idea is that year 1, he really just comes in and fights the fire. Year 2, he's a corner piece, but then years 3 and 4, he's spending a lot more time like mentoring the younger midfielders. And I just don't feel that United has any of those guys on their books. That like
in Madrid, he was playing next to Kroos and Modric, who are two of the like elite midfielders of the last generation. And he's going to come to Manchester and get dropped into a midfield next to Fred and Scott McTominay.
And you're talking about spending $65 million for a guy you just said who will play year one, play year two, and then is kind of relegated towards the bench in year three, and you're going to spend that amount of money on that. I mean, to me, it's just asinine. Just take the L for a couple of years and start purchasing some, younger guys with some upside and put them in the proper positions to succeed. I mean, don't keep playing eights as sixes, and don't keep playing, going for guys who are, strikers who are 35-year-old plus. I mean, it's not going to help the long-term future of the club.
And I think the thing too with Casemiro
is as a CDM.
Yeah. What about a cam? No, I think the thing with Casemiro, I mean, I was kind of joking about it earlier, but I mean, he's been an elite midfielder, but that's because he's been playing in an elite team. And I don't think he's the same player in this Manchester United midfield, because I think he's been helped out so much by having, I mean, literally one of the probably 3 or 4 best squads in Europe around him. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I mean, he's not going to come in and be the same Casemiro that he was at Real Madrid in this United team. Like Chris is saying, just if they had the infrastructure and analytics and scouting department like that we see at a Liverpool, or even some of these mid-table teams like Leicester, who have been able to kind of find undervalued players and bring them in. I know they haven't really brought anybody in this transfer window, but like Brentford, Brighton, they've done an exceptional job buying low, getting players in and developing them really well, and then selling them on. And you'd think that a club that has the resources, theoretically, because the Glazers aren't actually going to spend the resources, but you'd think that a Manchester United would just realize that, okay, analytics and scouting is the first place to go. We don't have to just spend insane transfer amounts. We just have to get players who are actually going to be effective and build from there. But that's not going to happen under this ownership.
The last thing that I'm going to add before I want to talk, the last shot at United. United has made Everton not look like the biggest dumpster fire in the league, and that is saying something.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
The other thing I wanted to hit on the Premier League is Leeds United States. We saw Brendan Aronson make his debut, and Tyler Adams, especially in that first game against Wolves. Like, they both just looked so good. I was worried
Aronson was
about
the best
Aronson
player on the field.
I was very worried about Aronson and from his size and the physicality of the Premier League. But I mean, I know it's only 2 games, and I'm trying to pump the Brendan Aronson hype train. But damn, does he look good. A lot of fun to watch. I think he's really going to ingratiate himself with the Leeds fans. And I think it's just a damn shame that Patrick Bamford cannot get healthy or stay healthy.
Yeah, it's been rough. But I mean, they've been better than I expected them to be at this point. I mean, Aronson, Adams, and really the entire team. I mean, especially after how close they came last year to being relegated. I think they've done some pretty good business in the summer. And I think I'm excited to see how they finish out the year. Let's just go ahead and do it. Scoreline predictions for United, Liverpool, and then we'll get out of here.
I'm going to say 4-1.
I thought you were going to say 14, and I was like about to say, that's a legitimate scoreline.
No, 4-1.
I'm going to go a 3-0, but if you go back and watch the match, you will be shocked that it wasn't 7-0. That somehow, De Gea maybe comes up with a big save, though he couldn't do that last week. And it's just a constant barrage of attacks.
I'm going to say 5-0. Liverpool score 4 in the first half. Cristiano Ronaldo gets subbed off at halftime, just leaves the stadium, and is never seen in Manchester United again.
The last thing I'll say is man, I loved seeing Brentford, just like that one body check that he just got absolutely rocked. I just absolutely inject that shit in my veins.
I will say that 4-0 loss was probably the most enjoyable match I've watched as a United fan in the last 5 years.
I mean, you guys are channeling. You're channeling the Liverpool of 16-17 with those. We had jerseys in that exact same color. We called them the Toxic Thunder jerseys, and they never did well in them.
Well,
So
I don't think United will either. So
1/3 of us will be happy on Monday. Anyway, guys, it's not been a lot of happy topics on this episode, but thanks for hanging out tonight. Thanks to everybody who listened and watched and commented, especially Maximo. You kept us going with
shout
15,
out Marshall.
20 comments. So thanks for that. Everybody, as always, make sure to check out BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We have some exciting announcements coming up this next week, as well as the same content. Chris is churning out the analysis after every game, which has usually been breaking down losses. Hopefully something will change on Sunday night. But until then, we'll be back next week with the Nashville Soccer Show and hopefully another one of these episodes. Everybody, thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you next time.
Never go full shepherd.
Nope.